Something felt wrong in my own house, and I couldn't name it. Not yet. I told my daughter I was heading to the lake cabin for the week, packed my truck and drove off. 40 miles out, I turned around. That night, my neighbor pressed a folded note into my hand and whispered, "Stay, watch. Don't go inside until midnight." When midnight came, and I saw what had been happening under my own roof, I sat in the dark of an empty house across the street and shook for the first time in 30 years. My name is Gerald Hobbs. I'm 64, and I spent 3 decades as a forensic accountant, the guy companies call when someone they trusted has been quietly stealing from them. I'd testified in federal court more times than I could count. I thought that made me hard to fool. It didn't. My wife died 4 years ago, breast cancer, 14 months start to finish. After that, our colonial house outside Charlotte felt like a museum, every room exactly the way she'd left it. My daughter Melanie and her husband Owen moved in 8 months ago. Temporary, she said, just until Owen found work again. I said yes without thinking twice. She was all I had left. The trouble started on a Tuesday in October, the way it always starts in my line of work. Not with a smoking gun, but with something small, feeling slightly off. My home safe sits bolted in my closet floor. I keep the house deed in there, my will, insurance documents. I hadn't opened it in 3 months. When I finally did, the dial had resistance in the wrong place. 30 years of habit means I know exactly how that dial should feel. Someone had tried it. They hadn't gotten in, but they'd tried. That night at dinner, Melanie wouldn't quite meet my eyes. Owen made small talk about hiking trails, about football, the kind of talk people make when they're stalling. Then Melanie leaned forward, casual. "Dad, have you thought about what you want to do with the house long term? The market's shifting. Might be worth talking to someone." I said I'd keep it in mind. I watched Owen the rest of the meal. He looked at her twice before she'd even finished speaking. The look of a man who'd agreed to something he hadn't made peace with. I didn't sleep. By dawn, I had a plan. Over coffee, I mentioned I was heading to the cabin for a few days. Melanie's face flickered, quick, almost invisible, before she smiled and said I deserved the break. I packed a duffel and fishing rods where they'd see them. Underneath the sleeping bag, I packed my old camera, a notepad, and a digital recorder. I drove north, then doubled back and checked into a motel under a false name 12 miles from home. My neighbor Doris had lived across from us for over 20 years. She called me before I even finished explaining. "I've been watching them," she said. A man had visited our house twice in 3 weeks. Business suit, black SUV, always let in by Melanie, always leaving with folders. She'd already written down his plate number. That night I broke into the vacant house next door, using a lockbox code I recognized from another listing, found a bedroom with a clean sightline to my porch, and watched. Through the window, I could see Melanie pacing on the phone. Owen sat rigid on the couch, watching her the way a man watches someone he's afraid to disagree with. At 11:40, Doris joined me with a thermos and a notebook full of dates going back 6 weeks. "He's coming tonight," she said. Minutes later, headlights swept the driveway. A man in his late 40s stepped out with a briefcase, checked the street both ways, and walked up my porch steps like he'd done this before. I recorded everything through the cracked window. They spread documents across my dining table, the same table where I'd once helped Melanie with algebra homework. Owen signed something, his pen moving like he wished he could take it back. As they left, I caught the words that mattered most. The buyer was cash. The deed would hold. And when Owen asked quietly, "What happens with your father?" Melanie cut him off. "He won't know until it's done. And by then it won't matter." Doris looked at me. I said only, "She forged a deed." Then quieter, I build a case. That's what I've always done. The next morning, while they thought I was still at the cabin, I let myself into my own house and found the folder in a guest room drawer. A quitclaim deed, my forged signature, a notary stamp with a registration number that didn't exist in county records. I photographed every page. Then I saw Owen's phone, unlocked, on the desk. A text thread with his sister in Raleigh. "You need to get out of this. This is federal." His reply, "I don't know how to stop it." He hadn't built this. He'd been dragged into it. That afternoon, I hired a real estate fraud attorney. By 5 p.m., she'd filed a deed of trust in my name, flagged my accounts for secondary verification, and recorded a sworn affidavit that I'd signed nothing. The trap was set before they even knew it existed. I called Owen that evening. He didn't deny anything. He met me and my attorney the next morning with every document, every message, and the notary's name. Paid $400 cash for a fraudulent stamp. At the closing, Melanie walked in composed, ready to sign. She didn't see me until she reached the table. I laid out the deed of trust, the fraudulent notary records, and pressed play on the recording. Her own voice filled the room. "He won't know until it's done." She was charged with deed fraud and financial exploitation of an elder. Owen cooperated and received deferred prosecution. The notary lost her license. Melanie took a plea, 2 years probation, community service. She hasn't called since. The house is quiet now, the way it was quiet after my wife died. Not peaceful, just empty. I still make coffee every morning and look out at the garden she planted, still blooming without anyone's help. Doris brings tomatoes from her yard, and we sit on the porch and talk about anything except what happened. We don't need to. I spent 30 years telling people fraud always leaves a trail, that the ones who think they've covered everything always miss the most obvious variable. This time, that variable was me. If Gerald's story moved you, hit like. Tell us in the comments what you would have done in his place. And subscribe to Aftermath Tales for more powerful stories like this one.